I absolutely love this tool. It has been a lifesaver since the beginning of Horizon's import process. So for today's agenda, first we're going to briefly go over the skills matrix overview. Next, we're going to look at some examples of what a Substance Painter can do. I mean, really just simple examples that you can use for Horizon Worlds. Basically, we're going to go over the UI very lightly, just a few things, especially the things I go straight to, the tools and items. And then we're going to do texture and layering, and then we're going to do Horizon export. So we're going to set up together how Substance Painter does the texture, oh my gosh. Anyways, how they combine the textures. Okay. And I don't know why. Phew. Okay. So here is this skills matrix alignment. We have, as always, we are in the art section of this, and then in the assets, the design and creation of static meshes for use as world environments or items, props, wearables, all of that. All right, so I haven't touched it yet. I made a few things, and Substance Wizards. I see a few wizards in here. You guys are awesome. Alrighty, so let's get into the examples. Sorry, I'm rushing through this. Okay, so first up is the BR material. It is what it is, right? It's basically the texture that gives the color information. Flat, simple. It can range through all the spectrums of color, stuff like that. It's just plain and simple. BR is your first and your main thing that you're probably going to import when you're learning how to import into Horizon Worlds. Next, you have BR+MEO. So MEO, it means metalness, emissive, and ambient occlusion. So you have your metalness, which is the which is the red channel. So anything that has metal in it, you will see your MEO PNG come out reds, pinks, magentas, and I'll show you an example. And then you have your E, which is your green channel. So the green channel would be the emissive. Now, normally when we are, you don't really need to use an MEO if you just have the ambient occlusion. You could absolutely bake it into your texture. However, in this case, if you combine all three together, you can make something pretty cool. Okay. Now, we are going to cover how to make glass. I think this is a lot of favorites here. A lot of people want to make glass and crystals and anything super shiny and magical. I will show you how to do so. So here are our items. I went really simple, as you can see from the slides. So you guys can see the difference. I have a square, a sphere, Sue's the monkey, and I'm gonna call this a donut. So a Taurus, but a donut. I like food. So basically, the thing about having items come into Substance Painter is, number one, first and foremost, those UVs have to be good, meaning that the islands should not be stacked on top of each other. And the reason for that is when you go into Substance Painter, you're going to want to basically bake the AO into your textures. So for example, I have these 4 items. So I'm going to go into UV editing. Cheez-Its. Okay. So I have my 4 items here. And why can't I click anything? There we are. Okay, so I have my 4 items here. I'm going to go into edit mode, press A, And as you can see, I have organized my items in a certain way. They have a good amount of spacing. So basically, when you have an item that you possibly sculpted, basically you have to make sure your UVs are unwrapped accordingly. There's no stretching, there's no skewing, and everything is within the same how you say resolution. So everything should be a certain size. So for example, if I were to take this face, which would be Sue's the monkey's face, and I were to just bring this here, that is no good. And the reason why is that if I'll tell you, if I were to bake this, there would be a lot of shadows being baked onto all the other items here. So what it is to UV unwrap. So basically, you're taking your 3D object and you're basically bringing it into a 2D format, you know? So you're taking those pairs of scissors and you're cutting along the edge loops and you're telling Blender, hey, I want this to open up and I want this to lay flat. So absolutely, yes. Thank you for that. That's actually a really excellent example. Thank you. So, and this part of modeling is really, really important for you to get the best textures that you can get. There's no way around it. There's no skipping steps or anything like that. You must learn how to UV properly before you get some really good results as far as like texture baking and texture mapping and all that. Thank you. Yes. So moving on. So now that I have my 4 items here, I'm going to go ahead and open up Substance Painter. So here is Substance Painter. If it does not look like this when you open it up, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, cool. So, if it does not look like this, this is basically, to me, I call this the vanilla layout, meaning base layout. If it does not look like that and you're missing some windows, you go to Window and you go to Reset UI, and then everything goes back to place. Now, I'm going to go ahead and import an item. So I'm going to go to New. I'm going to change this document resolution to 2048 just because for demo purposes. And next I'm going to go to this file select, and then I'm going to choose my file. So right now I want to use my BR file. Okay. So it's pretty much self-explanatory. I have my shapes here. So now if I wanted to, let's say, move around in Substance Painter, I am on a Windows PC. I am going to hold down the Alt button and the left mouse button, and now I can orbit. Or if I press Alt and then middle mouse button, I can pan. And of course, if I were to scroll in and out, I can scroll in and out on my object here. So this is really handy because now I can go in and let's say I were to want to do some paint strokes, I can absolutely do so. So really important to get familiar with your softwares and how you actually maneuver in this 3D space. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys. All right. So here it says assets. This is where all of like the fun settings are. You have your regular materials. Some of these are really cool because you can tile them. They have a lot of like really cool features. Then you can go over to the smart materials. That is the next item over. And now you can see all of these materials that you can play with. And side note is that you can absolutely make your own smart materials. So I find that feature really cool. I do create a lot of smart materials just because once I used to I make like glitter materials and stuff like that. However, with the method I use for glitter materials, they use normal maps and height maps, and it just doesn't unfortunately it doesn't transfer into Horizon because Horizon does not take normals. So now you got your smart masks, and I'll show you how to use those. This is a really cool tool to use. And more features, like these are filters and generators that you can use to create a lot of cool just effects for your items. And this is something worth playing around with for sure. Then you have your paintbrushes. You have a whole lot of alphas. This is a whole library of really cool effects you can paint with. No normals in Horizon, I know, but you can bake, you can use the AOs to bake in details and stuff, but unfortunately we're gonna have to fake it till we make it until we actually get normal maps. But from what I see, I don't think. Yeah, I've been singing that song, guys. I really want normal maps. It would just bring so much of a robust experience as far as texturing, but I can only dream, right? So next we have some more alphas. These are not paintbrushes per se, but they are more alpha tools to play around with, and I'll show you guys how to use these. Some normals. I'm not gonna get too much into this. I'm just going to stick to the basics for now and show you guys how to use these. And now this is really interesting. These are the HDRIs, meaning these will help affect the lighting in the scene. For example, if I were to kind of click and drag this in, now you can see that the scene's colors changes. Now, I don't necessarily use this that much, but let's say, for example, you had a sky that lit up similar to this. This might be helpful, especially when you are texturing. You just want to know that the textures don't get washed out, as far as colors, because color theory is if you put colors on top of colors, it gets muddy sometimes, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind, but I absolutely just keep it at vanilla. Actually, I'm just going to keep it at this because this is pretty much what Horizon has for that reflection map. I don't know if you guys have seen it before. Something that's super duper shiny gives this image right here. This is the exact image it gives. So now that we know where these assets are, of course, if you have the subscription, you get this extra little tab here, and you have a whole library of textures to choose from. They're really fun to play around with, but keep in mind that these normal maps, all of this bumpiness are not going to be seen. So it's kind of a womp, but there are ways around it. Like I said, if you want details, you're going to have to possibly sculpt them in. So that's just my suggestion. All right. So now we're going to look at the toolbar. So we have our paintbrush tool. So for example, if I were to go and I'll go here, I have a first paint layer. I can go down to this properties panel. So first, I'm sorry, I'm skipping, but right here, we have a texture set list. Remember when we're in Blender and we are setting our material, We are naming it first before we bring it into Substance Painter, of course, because that is super helpful, and I'll show you why later on. So basically, you go here, and you can see I actually named my material demo number 1, right? I don't have any BR after it, and that's for a very specific reason. So keep this in mind. And now I'm going to go down here, and I have my layers tab. And this layers tab absolutely works like Photoshop. So there's a lot of overlapping and layering. It's just great. And we'll see that in a second. And then we have our texture set settings. Now here, let's say I had set my texture to 2048. If I wanted something higher, like 4096, or if I wanted something super low, I would just bump this down. Basically, you're not married to the setting that you put on at the beginning. So that's actually really great. Here are all the channels that we work with. If you are missing a channel in here, you can absolutely press this plus sign. And look at that. I don't have ambient occlusion, which is weird. So I went ahead and added that to my texture set. Now, over here so now I have my paintbrush tool ready to go. But now I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here in the properties, and I'm going to choose a color. So I'm going to choose this red color, and look at what happens when I paint on my guy here. So now I have painted on my model, or I can go here and paint on my model right on the UV map. Now this is really, 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 really helpful. And that's because if you needed to get really good detail, if you really wanted to get into it, there are very specific reasons and just times where you just need to get into that UV map. And I'll show you another way to use it. So for example, going down the list, I do have an eraser tool, the paint along path. I'm not going to cover that today. Projection, polygon fill. This one is my absolute favorite. And then you have the smudge tool and the clone tool. But we're going to go right to this polygon fill. This one's my favorite because it actually makes certain experiences a lot easier. So for example, let's say Suze the Funky Monkey wants some red eyes. Come on. What did I do? Property. Oh, polygon. Oh, I know what I did. Sorry. I'm going to add a fill layer. And basically what I needed to do, sorry about that, is I needed to fill the color on all my guys. Basically, I did a paint bucket tool. But watch what happens when I do right click and add black mask. Basically, what's going to happen is what I initially wanted was to paint by polygons. And this is really, really, truly helpful. Now I can block out all the colors on my model, right? I don't have to sit there and basically, let's say I wanted to try to paint a straight line here. I'm going to bring this size down a bit. And let's say I'm trying to paint a straight line with my mouse, by the way. I don't have my pen tablet. It doesn't work, but it's okay. Now, this is not so great, right? This is not a great experience. This will take forever. So what I really want is this polygon fill, and boom, boom, boom. Now I can paint by polygons, which is really helpful and really super duper neat. Okay, so now that we have our paint by polygons, let's move forward into painting the entire thing. So for example, I want to do another polygon fill And then I want to mess around with the material types. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to bring these UVs to the side because we don't really need it at the moment. And I'm going to choose another color. So what color should this monkey be? I think a good purple would do just fine. I always choose purple, guys. And pink. Okay, I'll do pink. Okay, I'll do pink. There you go. Pink monkey. All right, so now I have a pink monkey. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, add black mask. And now look what happens when I click and drag. It's really neat. However, if I were to click and drag the wrong way, it will go right through, right? So what I'd want to do is, for that instance, it would be easier to just basically do it by the UV map. And as you can see now, since everything's all laid out, I can neatly just grab things. So if I were to press X, that would actually help me fix my oopsies. You see? Boom, boom. Now that's nice and clean. So basically, we are working with a black mask, meaning if a black mask is put over it, everything just disappears, right? And so what I'm doing to add the color back is I'm painting it with white. So you don't see it. However, the best indication for it would be on this right-hand side under the properties panel, you have your color activated. And so now it's telling me that I can now take away color. So if I were to click on these polygons, I could take away these colors. But no, I want to press X and I want to bring those colors back. Now you can absolutely use this slide bar, and you could take advantage of it, and you can, change the opacity of that mask, right? And that is super useful for certain situations. So it's really cool. So now let's see what our fabulous monkey looks like. I'm going to actually press. There we go. I used the slider. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Okie dokie. So now my funky monkey has pink fur, right? All right, cool. So now you guys know how to add another layer. But let's say I wanted to paint these other guys. Well, you absolutely can. I can go ahead and go over to this paint bucket tool. And let's say I wanted this Taurus to be another color. Let's say I wanted it to be green. I can do so. Right click, add black mask, and just do the thing. You just kind of fill it out, right? Click and drag, and then you got everything going. Now let's mess around with this green material. Let's take a look. So let's say I wanted this material to be metallic, right? And I don't want it to necessarily transfer over into everything else. However, it's masked out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select this sphere here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess around with these sliders. So for example, I have now base color, height. I can take away height because we don't need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that off. Roughness, we absolutely need. Metal, we're going to need because I want something metal. Normals, of course, we don't need them. Opacity, opacity we're not using at the moment. Emissive, no. And AO, no. So now let's see what happens when I bring this slider down. So now I have a shiny Taurus. If I bring this metallic slider up, now I have a metallic, super duper metallic Taurus. All right, cool. Now let's see what happens when we add another layer. So for example, I can go ahead and add another layer on top, and look at that, it is covered. So now, let's say I wanted to add kind of like a teal material, and now I want to mess around with emissive. Okay, cool. I have my emissive tab open. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take this color from black and take it to get this teal color. All right, cool. Now that I have this teal color, you see how it's super shiny? You could see kind of like the curves of this guy. Well, in Horizon, this emissive, it would be great. However, it would kind of be dull. So when you mess around with emissive, it's best to have your roughness all the way up. So definitely take those sliders all the way up. So I'm going to bring back the roughness slider, and then I'm going to bring that all the way up. And now what you can see is your item is unlit, which is pretty neat. So now if I go ahead and right click, add the black mask, I can now do something really cool where I can just click and drag, and now I have metal with an emissive. I'm going to do that a little neater. I don't have to, all right, I'm going to do this. It's probably going to go, yeah, that's fine. But as you can see, I can absolutely mix materials. One thing I did not do before I started everything, and is usually what you should do when you start off in Substance Painter, especially if you want to use those smart materials, is you go over here to where it says mode, and you can click on Bake Mesh Maps. Another place you can click that in basically is on this right hand side is the Le Croissant. So I'm going to go ahead and click this croissant, Le Croissant. And so I'm going to just do a few settings, a few like really simple settings. So I'm going to do the output size. Remember, we set it to this 2048. Definitely bake your mesh maps accordingly. And then the dilation width, I do like to bring that up a little bit. And that's kind of like, hey, I want to brighten the lamp for this, for my baking, right? Everything else we do not need to work with at this moment. We're just going to keep it super simple for you guys to understand. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this blue button, which is Bake Selected Textures. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And as you can see, now it's going to work. And so basically what this is doing, it's saying, hey, I need you to measure my topology. I need you to measure my mesh. I need to know what's high, what's low, what's creased in, what's creased out, stuff like that. So now in order to get back to where I need to go, I can go to return to painting mode. All right, sweet. Now I'm back in painting mode, and you kind of can see like it worked a little bit, right? But we won't know what it did until we do a few things. And actually this HDRI is bothering me a little bit. How do I change this? Hold on. I forget which one it was. It might have been this one. No, that's not that one. Give me 1 second. Was it this one? No, it was not. Was it? That one's just fine. Okay, so now you can see the metallic. Okay, so one thing to note, that metal will not look like that in Horizon. Very sorry. We definitely do have to be realistic when we are looking at Substance Painter, is that some things just aren't going to look the same, especially that metal right there. I wish we had like that super shiny metal, but there's a lot of stuff a lot of information that needs to go into Horizon in order for that to work. Okay. So now that I have my baked mesh maps, right, I want to play around with ambient occlusion, right? I want to play around with our shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I want to finish my monkey here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a color. I'm going to give my monkey kind of like, I'm going to give, she's going to look super fancy. Okay, so now I'm actually going to bring up the roughness just a bit. Alrighty, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click, add black mask, and go to my polygon fill and go ahead and fill the layers as such. All right, and this is super duper useful. I can't stress that enough. This has saved so much time in my texturing process. Okay, cool. Now I have a color for my monkey. However, that color looks a little flat. One thing that I can do is I can bring in a filter, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create another layer. And I'm going to give it like a lighter kind of like, I don't know, yellowish color, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and add a filter. Now that I have a filter, I can go to filter, and then this one right here is really a really cool tool to use. Baked lighting stylized, and basically this is going to mess around with that AO we created. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and as you can see, something did happen, but we obviously need to tweak some things. So now what I'm going to do is, first off, I'd like to take this masking from normal. It's either overlay. Yep, overlay is pretty good. So it did create something for everywhere else, but what I really want is to really focus on Sue's here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder. So basically I'm going to go ahead and create a folder, and I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to just drop it in that folder. And something funky happened, and that's okay. What was it? Oh, I see. No. What are you doing? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a black mask really quick. And where's my stun? All right, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and do the polygon fill. And I'm going to fill my layers like I did before. Sorry I did that twice, but that's okay. Practice makes perfect. Alrighty, cool. Now I got to mess around with why it looks like that really quick. So hold on a second. I'm going to go ahead and go into this, and I'm going to do, let me do screen really quick. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Soft light. Yep, soft light is good. I'm going to go back here because I see some mistakes in my masks. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these polygons. And as you can see, I have some mistakes. So I can absolutely spot them by pressing X and taking them out over here. So there is going to definitely be a lot of back and forth. But definitely, yeah, make those mistakes, learn. It's the best way to do this stuff. Okay. So Now I have this filter, which is messing around with the ambient occlusion really nice. I'm going to take away these lines so we can see it. Alrighty, so now I can go back into this filter by clicking on this, just like Photoshop. You know how in Photoshop you create, you double click and you create kind of like overlays where you create a stroke and stuff like that. This is basically the same concept. It's all kind of like stacked underneath. So now I clicked on this guy, I go down to the properties, and now I have a bunch of things to manipulate. One thing I am going to go straight to is this sun and sky. And as you can see now, I can change the intensity of this bake, right? So basically I'm emulating what a light bake would do in Blender. But now I can absolutely just go right into it and just kind of like real time manipulate what the texture is going to look like. Or I can change the angle of the sun, right? And the intensity of that lamp. So it's pretty neat. It's a pretty neat tool to have. You can do a lot of things. You can actually stack and layer these. And yeah, seriously, it's really cool. So now there's one more thing I'd like to do to Suze before I go into everything else. Oh yeah, the brushes with the simulation is really cool. One thing I do want to cover really quick before I do anything else, sorry guys, is I want to do a fill layer. And then I'm going to choose a darker color. Alrighty. And then what I'm going to do, actually, that darker color should go on top there. All right, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I want to basically create kind of like a shadowing, right? So basically what I'm going to do is go over to here to this smart masks. And now I want to put like kind of like shadows in the creases, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose any one of these guys. I mean, really, they all do something really cool and something different. It's up to you guys what you prefer. I'm trying to think. Occlusion strong. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and basically click, drag, and drop into this square that populates. And now you can see that now Suze kind of looks like a grunge monkey, like a robot monkey or whatever, which is pretty neat. And now there are a few things I can do with this. I can absolutely mask it out to where I don't, like in places that I don't want it, or I can manipulate it by adding kind of like can I add a filter here? Let me see something. So I'm going to add a blur filter and I'm going to just bring this up and I can just blur certain areas out. And as you can see, you can add a like a cool, you know, anything really. I mean, it really depends on what you're going for. You can absolutely add a wart. You can add a wart if you wanted to. But for this instant, I'm not looking to add warts. And as you can see, it did spread all around. But what's cool about Substance is that you can stack. So I can absolutely take this folder. I could take all these guys. And I could just drop it into the folder and then click on right click, add black mask. And I could just, oh my gosh, this computer is acting really bogus. And I can just isolate that one item. Really cool, really neat. So now I have my two items. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you guys how to use alphas. Alrighty, so now let's create a new fill layer, and let's say I wanted to now, I don't know, make it interesting. I'm gonna make it green. Actually, no, I already made it green. Let's make it blue. Okay, now what I'd like to do, I'm going to bring up the roughness, and I don't know, I'll just leave it like that. So a few things. Alphas. Alphas are really cool because now you can use them as a stencil. Basically, if you have a black and white image and you wanted to create certain shapes and certain tilings and texturing, you can do that. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a fill layer. Let's say I wanted to do emissive detail. So I'm going to take all these guys out. I'm going to bring up that roughness, and let's say I want to work with yellow. And then I'm going to make that color yellow, emissive. But now what I'd like to do is I'd like to add a black mask. And now I'm going to search for an alpha that I want to work with. So for example, I have these really cool patterns that come stock in Substance. Let's keep it cute. Let's use those stars. Okay, so cool. Now that I have those stars, I'm going to go over to this properties panel. Now that I have my mask and I have it selected on my layers, I'm going to go ahead and look for stencil, which is already here. So now if I were to click and drag the stencil onto there, you can see the stencil populate. Now I can pick and choose where the stencil goes in my 3D space. So for example, if I wanted to project this stencil from here, look what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just mess around with that. Now, the problem with that is this. If I did put this stencil in that direction, it's going to skew, right? Another way to mess around with these, now, granted, it's actually really cool to use these stencils. Let's say if you needed to get a certain angle and you wanted to really pinpoint where things were going to go, you can absolutely do so. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the stencil again, and I just wanted to spot that artwork there, and there you go. There you have it. But I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and this is where my sphere is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop this stencil, and basically, and I'm going to just close this up so we can get a better look. And now if I were to line this up, it's a little bit of a to-do, but once you learn how to maneuver around, like right now I'm clicking Alt, middle button, I can maneuver around this UV section here. So now if I were to just color this in, look what happens. Do that nice. I'm going to just click that off. Cheese it. You know what? The screen is so small, but I'm making it work. It's a little stretched, but as you can see now, you have those stars on your texture map, right? So that's one way to do it. Now let's say I wanted to do like a metal detail right on top of these stars. I can absolutely do so. But first I'm actually going to put this in a filter layer. So I'm going to go ahead, put that, and I'm going to do add black mask, put on my polygon fill, and just, there we go. Very cool. So now what I'm going to do is I want to put some more detail on this guy. So I'm going to go over to my UV section here, my UV viewport actually. I'm going to go ahead and create my paint bucket tool, and I'd like for the details to be gold, right? I want them to be kind of like golden-ish. Right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically turn these guys off. Not this, not emissive. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump up that metalness, and I'm going to bring down that roughness. And look what happens when I use that. So I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, I want another fun texture. Let's say I want this texture. It's weird and awesome. Actually, I don't want to do that. I want to add that black mask first. What happened? Come on. You're messing me up. That's okay. I'll just put that on top. No. No, what are you doing? Hold on. Oh, because I'm on Polygon fill. Hello. Yeah, turn off that Polygon fill. Sometimes it will mess me up. Okay, so now if I wanted to add that gold detail, now this would be cool if you wanted to like make pillows or something funky like that, and you wanted to add that little metallic detail, or I don't know, a wallpaper, that will actually show really nicely, you know? Okay, but I need this to be under this filter. All right, cool. Now I have that detail. And yeah, so the cube, let's see, what did I cover? Oh, smart materials. Oh my gosh, smart materials. So now that I ran through all of these guys and learned how to layer, let's look at how a smart material works. So we're going to go over here, and now you see these really fun material spheres, right? These are absolutely fun to play with, and guess what? You can actually make them yourself, right? So for example, this guy here, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, and check it out. Now you get all these really cool, effects, right? That can absolutely be customized to what you need them for. So for example, if I were to open up this folder, as you can see, it's basically what I did with all of these other materials, right? That we created from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a black mask again so that we could just isolate it onto that cube. All right, cool. So I'm going to turn off that polygon fill because that did mess me up before. Okay, so now I have this really cool kind of like chipped paint layer, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and I can actually choose any one of these and really tweak them to what I want. For example, if I were to click on this color sphere, I can go down here to this properties fill panel, and then I can change this and I can make it this color, you know, whatever. This is like a seafoam-ish color, right? And this metal, I can change it into another color too. Let's say I wanted that metal to be like a copper. So I would go here to edges and damages, and I can change this color and just bring this over. And now it can absolutely be kind of like a dark copperish. I can actually tweak that a little more by bringing down the metallic. So what happens with metal, if you have it too high, for horizon, what happens is horizon takes it and it makes it super duper dark, right? Like you could bump up the metal as much as you want, but if you have it way too high, it just comes out really dark. And then you're going to find yourself like, oh, this is not the shine I want. This is not the metal that I'm looking for, you know? So I would definitely play around with that. And so now I have this really cool detail. Another thing that you can tweak is actually the features on there. So for example, let me see something. Yes. So here I can click on this curvature after clicking on this mask here. And if I bring up this properties fill, I can change the global blur. As you can see, it blurs that filter. I can change the balance. You know, I can really make it a little more corroded, as you can see, which is really neat. I can change the contrast. Well, it's not doing much. It is doing something, but it's more of the fine detail. But it's really neat, really cool. And so on and so forth. Like, you can really pick and choose, like, season to taste. You are the artist. You have the vision in mind. And yeah, play around with these because these are really fun. Okay, so now that we have all of these guys ready to go, I could actually import this as an MEO, right? All of these guys definitely qualify as an MEO. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Export Textures, and what we are doing now is we're going to create our own output template. Now, there are templates going around that you can absolutely share with your friends. However, I do think that it's best to know how to create your own outputs and you know what they are for, because like just knowing your tools is super important. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my output templates tab. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus sign. And then basically what this is doing is you're creating that channel packer that, you know, everybody's been talking about. Oh, you need to pack your channels. You need to do this. You need to, Substance does it for you. You just need to tell it what to pack, which is really neat. I really like this. It just makes life so much easy. And once you have it really set up how you want it, all you have to do is click on export. I mean, of course, you have some steps along the way. You click on export and boom, you have your texture. You don't have to do anything to it. So what I'm going to do now is I created a new export preset. I'm going to double click on this and I'm going to call this for Horizon BR, right? You can name it however you want, but for this instance, I'm just using that name. I've been using a bunch of different names. It doesn't matter as long as you know which presets you have. All right, so, and you could absolutely take out the presets you feel like you don't need. However, I don't recommend that. I recommend you keeping all of these in case maybe in the future you'd want to use any of these programs such as Unity. And they also have a Blender output, I think, somewhere, or just not Blender, but PBR, metallic roughness. All these guys will help you use whatever you want. Okay, so over here it says output maps. Now we need to tell it, okay, which map do we want to create at the moment? And at the moment we're going to do RGB plus A. RGB plus A is that BR. RGB meaning the base color, the RGB channel, and the R is your roughness. So you can absolutely pack your shininess and your texture all in one, right? That's what this is telling you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this and I'm going to click on this $sign here. I'm going to choose texture set. The reason why I'm using this, and it's very important, you remember how I said all the way in the beginning, is that I named my mesh specifically demo number 1 with no BR after it. This is basically going to name it how I want it. So now I'm going to go ahead, click next to it, do _BR. so that when I click export, it's going to automatically give me the texture map I want. And I could just take my mesh and bring it into Horizon without a hitch, you know? Now, if I were to name it BR in Blender, what's going to happen? It's going to name it texture set, which would be demo number 1 BR. It's kind of like a to-do when you have to go back to the texture and rename it or just delete that extra BR. So when you export from Blender, just be sure, especially if you're only using BR and MEO, you just use the preset like that because it makes life a little easy. That way you don't have to go back and forth renaming things. It could get all jumbled up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign my base color and my roughness. So I'm going to go here to my input maps. I'm going to choose base color, click it, drag it, and now it gives me a few options. So the first option is the RGB channel. So I'm going to go ahead and click on RGB. Now, mind you, when you are assigning these presets, be mindful that it's going to be a different color every time you use them. And don't worry if it doesn't match what I have now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for roughness, click, drag. And then I'm going to choose gray channel. So the only time you use RGB is when you assign that B channel. You understand? So that's the only channel that's going to give color. Everything else is going to be an alpha, which is a grayscale type channel. So keep that in mind when you are doing your presets. I know this like the back of my hand because I've been doing it for a while. So, and I teach a lot of people how to do it. And I kid you not, it's good to learn how to do this because then you can actually experiment with a lot of things. And I'll show you one experiment I did that actually really, really helped out. All right, so next, actually, I did say BR, but I'd like to add plus MEO. And there we go. Now my preset is for Horizon, BR plus MEO. So now I'm going to assign that MEO channel. So I'm going to just kind of breeze through this really quick. I'm going to do R plus G plus B. Click on that. Delete this guy because we don't need it. Click on this $, texture set, and here we can assign our MEO underscore MEO. Now RGB MEO, so that would be metallic, gray channel. Remember, it's all going to be gray channels from now. Emissive, gray channel, and ambient occlusion. Boom, gray channel. All right, and that's it. Now our textures are going to be packed like automatically. So now if I go back to settings, now here are a few things that we need to remember. Is that output directory. We want to tell Substance Painter where to send these textures. And so you're going to click on, I've done it so many times. You're going to click on that button and you're going to be like, where did my textures go? And I always remember, I have to go back and do my output directory. So I'm going to just drop these textures here. And then another really important drop down that we need to remember is this output template. And that's exactly the template you need to export, basically. If not, you're going to click on this metallic roughness and you're going to get a whole bunch of textures you don't know what to do with. So what we're going to do is click on this drop down. And I have to search for the Horizon BR plus MEO. And I'm going to click export. And look what happens. It tells you what exactly it exported. I love this feature because it's solid confirmation that things came out, properly. And the naming convention is absolutely what I needed. So now I can take this and just drop it into Horizon. I'm going to go ahead and click on these 3 dots, start in desktop mode. If you have not opened the desktop editor, definitely open it up, play around, learn how to navigate, because it's a really good tool. Okay. Oh, that was something I did before. Yep. If we have enough time, I'm going to teach you guys how to bake high poly mesh to low poly mesh. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Assets, 3D Model, turn off the pivots because we don't need it right now. And then I'm going to search my thingamabob. There we are. So I did these guys. I don't remember what this was. This might be the mistake I made before, so let me check. Yes. So definitely that offset pivots is really helpful if you are a TypeScripter, especially if you want to do animations like door hinges and arms moving from elbows, stuff like that. That's what that offset pivot is for. But if you don't need it, there's no need to have it on your geometry, so just turn it off. For static items, this might be a mistake here, so let me see. Oh, yeah. No, it didn't work. All right, yep, that's the mistake. 1 second. Let me bring in the right one. I'm going to use this one, yeah. Oh, I did it. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? I'm getting tired. I'm sorry, guys. 1 second. I'm making mistakes. So basically, I have to take the texture, open it up, and then I have to go back in because I had the item on a different. Here we are. Open it up. Import. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag out. Okie doke. And now, as you can see, I have my wonderful creation. And that metallic actually came out super duper metallic. Look how shiny that came out. I'm actually quite pleased on how shiny that is. But yeah, you have all your materials. And as you can see, I love this because there is a variation of shiny and matte. So I really like to get those kind of textures into Horizon. They're really cool to see. And also, as you can see, I have my emissive and then I have my metallic. So when I turn off the lights, you can actually see this emissive glow. And you should actually see that emissive glow too. So I'm going to go ahead and take out a gizmo, this environment gizmo. And if I were to take this daytime, night panorama is good. As you can see, now I have these really cool textures. So yeah, it's pretty neat. Like you could do details like neon lights on walls and like graffiti or something, or like make magic potions, or like seriously, like go wild, go nuts, go crazy, and just be creative, you know? You could do so many things with these items. So yeah. Okay. So next, I'd like to show you guys how to make glass. And we're going to do some fun stuff. I guess what I'll do, I'm going to go ahead and just take this down, because I'm going to save this for you guys to play around with. If you have Substance Painter, you can have all this fun stuff. You can use those normals, and you can bake in your AO maps and use those to add some color. Basically, kind of like baking high poly to low poly. It's really cool. I don't know if anybody's ever been in Bugs. That's how I did my Raccoonus and my Blossom, the opossum. what I did was I had a high poly model and I textured it. I put my clay strokes and really put the work in. And then I took those models and I brought them down to low poly. So I retopologized them and brought them down to where it's okay to bring into Horizon. Then I took it into Substance Painter and I took that low poly and I baked that high poly on top. So let me get through this glass first, and then I'll show you guys how you can do that really simply. So now I have my guys here. And one thing to note is you're going to need opacity for this. So if you go to your texture set settings and you go and you add your channels, if you do not have opacity here, I would recommend clicking this plus sign and finding it. So now, excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. This cough has not gone away. But anyways, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this layers and we're going to choose, we're going to choose the color as usual. Actually, I'd like to take all these guys and demo BR. I'm going to just organize this for you guys. Boom, gone. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to choose a color. And what color glass should I do, guys? I always go to purple. So, I'm going to try to make it look like a blue. Okay, we're going to do blue. Alrighty. So, blue, blue, blue. So now we're going to do blue. And what we need to mess around with is, first off, we're going to take away height because we don't need it. Metal, we're going to need roughness. We're going to need take out normals, emissive, AO. Yeah, I'm going to take out the AOs. All right, so now what we're going to do, okay, is we have our color, we have our roughness, which we want our glass to be pretty shiny. And now we're going to bring up the metallic just a touch, not too much, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring down the opacity. Now, as you can see, now we're starting to look like glass. Really neat. And now if you don't have, if your items disappear, that happens, you can go into your texture sets and you can scroll down and you can start messing around. There's something in here, or maybe I don't need to do that anymore. Oh, possibly not. They probably fixed it. But if you, if your stuff does disappear, let us know in the CMI chat. I could actually help out with that. There's something in the settings that helps you see actual opacity. So keep that in mind. So now I have our extra shiny objects. The problem is that it looks like it's going to be a little bit transparent when I bring it into Horizon. So let's do our first experiment, because really you're going to be back and forth trying to get the actual right thing. So I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call this Mesa Experiment, all in caps because I'm yelling it. Now I'm going to go ahead and go File, Export Textures, Output Templates. And now there's something different I did for this scenario. So, and here is my preset here. So what I did was I have my BR. So of course, our BR is basically it. I have my my base color and my roughness, right? There's something a little different I did with my Mesa channels. And that is, instead of Here we go. So instead of putting specular, I actually changed it to ambient occlusion. And the reason why is because when I had specular, it gave me too much of a red color in my MEOs. In my MESA file. So I'll show you an example. And this is something that I believe it's in the documentation, but this is kind of like a tweak I did to get that perfect glass. Hold on one second. All right. So here is my MESA file that I did earlier today, kind of like experimenting and messing around. As you can see, I have this sort of, and it's transparent, by the way. This is the MESA. It has opacity, but you can sort of see what's going on here. You have your purples, you have your magentas, but you also have these reds. Now, the problem with the reds is this. It's going to be too metallic. And what I said earlier is if you have too much metalness, your color goes away. It becomes really, really dark, and you're not going to get the look that you're going for, especially if you want color glass, if you want crystals, if you want them super shiny, or if you want kind of like this pearlescent feel. You're not going to get that if your texture comes in too dark. And basically it should look more, and this kind of looks purple, is because it's transparent, but really it's more of the magenta color, which is that nice color to get your metalness in your MEOs and in your MESA files. So I'll show you what that is. So when I did my output maps, I did my texture set _ MESA, and here I have metallic for the R, emissive for the G, ambient occlusion. That is my very special change in this whole equation, is that ambient occlusion, and they're all grayscale, by the way. And the last one is really important too, is the opacity. Now let's see what it looks like when I export it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my output directory, choose my experiment folder, and now I'm going to go ahead and find that preset I created. Horizon _ MESA and export. Now, those who know, what am I missing? Because this is going to be the only time I'd have to go back and change. When you're creating a MESA file, what do you think needs to happen before you bring it into Horizon? A hint. What we need to do is change it to _transparent in your materials. So this would be the only time you need to add this prefix. And also you have your _UIOs, you have your _metal, all that. But those are more specialty items, right? But if you're just using BR _ with the MEO, you don't need to add that preset in here. So now that I have my demo1 _transparent, I'm going to go ahead and file, export FBX, and then I'm going to choose my MESA experiment, limit to selected objects. I always like to do it that way. And boom, there we go. So now if I were to pop over into Horizon, we can now look at our experiment. So I'm going to go ahead, open that up, change the sky, because we want to daytime. All right, cool. Now I'm going to go ahead, 3D model, find my items here, select, drag, open, and let's see what these look like. And now everything that I taught you before, as far as masking, as far as generating, you could do for this. You could do so many cool things. And I'm going to show you an example. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this. And now I knew it. It was going to be way too transparent. However, look at how shiny that came out. That is that preset that I changed up, right? In the documentation, it would say specular, but in this case, I find it best to use that ambient occlusion because to me, it gives me the better result. And everybody's different, but this, to me, this is like the glass to have. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into Substance Painter, minimize that, switch that up. And like I said, that was kind of too clear. I didn't see that blue color, which kind of made me sad. Not gonna lie, I wanted to see that blue color. So there are a few things I can do and I can experiment with. For example, the metallic, I can actually bring down the metallic a little bit, bring up the roughness a little bit, just a smidge, and that might fix it. So basically, the more metallic... Did I turn off the AO layer? That might have been it. But let's see how it looks. Either way, because I do feel that if you were to kind of like make it less, well, I'm gonna make it a little more rough and less metallic. Let's see what this looks like. So file. I think you're right, JB. Whoops. All right. So I can absolutely override what I have just by pressing export again. I don't have to, I'm not going to version it because I don't want that last one. I want the blue in there. So I'm going to do export and go back into Horizon and do add new 3D model. Always organize your folders. Kid you not, it gets messy. So definitely keep your stuff organized. I mean, this glass didn't come out so bad actually, but it's not what I wanted. It's not what I wanted. No. It's still too clear. Good naming conventions for sure. For sure. Hold on a second, because maybe the opacity is too low. That might be it. One more time, and then I'm gonna throw my PC. No. Export textures. Export again, and kid you not, like, don't worry about the back and forth. Like, it's part of the process. It truly is. So 3D model. Took me a long time to figure out the glass that I wanted. Oh my gosh, I was so happy. I made an entire grid full of crystals and stuff, which I mean, I didn't share, but it is just fun to experiment with these things. Let me see if the opacity worked. Now I have a little more color. Yeah, it's the opacity. All right, cool. So I could actually bump up that opacity a bit because we don't need it. And I'll tell you why. It's because the roughness and the metalness is actually giving us that information, just FYI. So if I were to bring that opacity just a smidge down, export textures, I'm going to go ahead, export. And I'm going to show you what can be done with some masking. Oh yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you could be picky, you could be choosy with what's happening in the process. Like That's part of it. Like that's passion right there, you know? It's like you're putting your soul into it. So why not? Why not? And now I can actually show you guys what it looks like if you put too much metallic. Hold on one second. Yep. So I lowered the opacity, and that is the look I want. That is the look I was going for. You see? It's super nice. Like you can use that for a lot of different things. I definitely like, I mean, there are different scenarios that you can use this one, different ones that you can use that one, but this one has more of the color I wanted to see. It's pretty neat, you know? And you can do lots of stuff with that, including adding all those layers, adding a whole bunch of stuff. So for example, if I were to go back into Substance Painter, and let's say I wanted to add some really magical features, such as dun, 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 some emissive. So I'm going to go ahead and layer it up with some emissive, and then I'm going to go over here and add one of these masks. And for example, this rust ground looks super cool. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in there. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to give it some sort of like fake bloom effect, right? First, I need to select this here, turn off these guys. Actually, there you go. Take this eyedropper, select the item I need, bring up the roughness because I want that super bright. And then I can do some other things. Like, for example, if I were to take this filter and tweak it a little bit. Nope. Is it this one? Nope. I'm in the wrong thing. Hello. Global balance. So I could just bring this down just a smidge. Contrast. A little bit of blur, but not really. I like all that grunginess. Okay, so one thing is for certain, we have a lot of cool details. But, like I said, I want a little bit of a bloom effect. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to a folder, add a filter, and then I'm going to do blur. And watch what happens. Now it kind of looks like radioactive a little bit, right? Like, it looks pretty neat. So when I bring this into Horizon, this is going to be both transparent and emissive, like, which is super duper neat, right? Like, so many things you could do. Like, you could put your logo on something, right? Like, for example, like, let's say a piece of glass, and you had like a storefront to a game, and you wanted your logo on that glass. Slap that logo on there. And here's how you actually bring in a logo, by the way. I forgot to show you guys, is if you have like a PNG, for example, would be my logo here. I'm going to drop that and I'm going to choose base color. Now I can have my logo on my items. All you have to do is click and drag your art and you have your artwork on here. Now, this is going to be transparent. I'm not going to like it this way, but I didn't create an alpha to do what I want. So I'm not going to cover this for this round. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But if you want to play around with adding your logos, just click and drag onto your geometry. And it's fun. It's super fun. And my other suggestion is to do it on the UVs because it gets a little messy when you get to the mesh, and then you have to do extra stuff, which we could save that for, I don't know, Substance Painter 102, where we get super more into detail. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to bring this into Horizon. Actually, I'd like to give this a little bit of a brighter blue. Yeah. There we go. Now, let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to do File, export textures. I already have what I need here. Now, brain blip. Turn this off. Click and drag. And I wanted to actually, I did that by accident because I wanted to show you guys what the Messify looked like. As you can see, this is a really good color to have. And I'm all about color, and like, seriously, I like to know what colors do what. And as you can see, this green channel is really showing. That means that these light spots are going to be super duper bright. That is absolutely exactly what I want for a nice texture to be imported into Horizon. So I'm going to go back and just click and drag, open, import. Now let's see what this is going to look like. Definitely you can make such magical worlds with emissive everything. Why not? Because it's just magical, you know. I like magic. So, and there we are. Now we have our Mesa with emissive, and you could also add like metallic features and stuff like that. I mean, really experiment. Seriously, you can't lose with a little bit of experimentation and playing. Like, get to know the program, and it will treat you very well. And there you have it. Now I have this really cool crystal items that are metallic and emissive. Right? It's pretty neat. So definitely experiment with that for sure. As you can see, it has that kind of like bloom effect a little bit. And that's that filter that I put on at the end, which was the blur. So yeah. And remember, you can stack. So let's say if you wanted some more sharper features, you can absolutely just kind of duplicate and just layer and kind of like nest up some items into folders. That's basically how they generate their smart materials and all that. And another thing to note is you can absolutely make your own smart materials. Let's say you love how this turned out and you want to save it for next time. So we're going to go back into Substance Painter and we're going to look at what we used. For example, I have this folder which I put in this emissive color and I added a blur. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select a new folder and I'm going to name this Magic Blast. Right? Cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two items, drop it, close that folder up, right click, and create smart material. Now, look at that. Now I created my own smart material. You know how many materials you can make and use, and you could just go to town and making all these really fun materials, and that will absolutely be used for when you bake your items, because that's the only time they will really truly work is after you bake. So keep that in mind. It's a really cool feature to have. And another thing to note is if you do dive deep down into the rabbit hole, there's also another Substance program which I don't use personally. I haven't had the time to really dive deep into it. Maybe another time. But for all you people who like to use like Blender nodes and stuff, that's a good way to create your own PBR materials, which is basically these guys. You basically download the program Substance Designer, and you could do so many cool things, cool effects and stuff like that. So it's more of a generator than anything. And if you know how to work with that, sky's the limit, seriously. But for now, we are focusing on Substance Painter, and Substance Painter is a lifesaver, and it also cuts your time way in half. I promise you.